Welcome to the Linefeed Reading List for August 2011. It feels like an age since I've done one of these, but it hasn't actually been that long. It's quite a good season for magazines at the moment. There's absolutely loads, and there's more coming out in September because you get all the big fashion specials and stuff like that. So this is busy time. I'm going to start with Print Magazine, which has been doing a really cool guest designer thing. Are they less issues? I'm not sure. But this is there's some covers. The last issue was designed by Kokuri and Moi, I think they're called. I might have got that wrong. But yeah, they did quite a controversial issue that it's a bit wacky. There's lots of drop shadows and weird textures and dodgy Photoshop effects, and I think it sort of blew some of the American readers' minds a bit. And this issue sort of follows on from that and is it's conventional by comparison. It's by Spin, and it's really lovely design. They always lead in with these weird sort of pages promoting HP, and it's on sort of weird paper, and they do weird things like that section had a white ink sort of put on top of it. Kind of interesting. I think it's promoting their digital printing sort of stuff. And you can see just from this flick through that it's I don't think it's unusual for Spin. It's quite crazy for them. Like, there's a lot going on in each page. Each page feels like different, like it's almost a bit hard to tell where certain articles stop and the next one starts. But it's a minor criticism. It's not really that bad. And all the I don't know if they had influence over the actual features. Oh, I hate those stupid pull-out things they put in mags like that. But yeah, the features are really good too. Like it's on the theme of movement, so they've got sort of political movements. They've got movement as in film titles. They've got movement as in wayfinding. It's really awesome geeky stuff for us design geeks. Somebody said on something, there was some thing about advertising people calling themselves geeks in a sort of ironic sort of way. Bit sad about that. I like the word geek. I have to think of something else to call myself. Plant Journal. Plant Journal I've been hanging out to have a look at for a while. From what I can tell, it seems quite influenced by sort of Apartmento and this sort of new breed of sort of home and interiors magazines. This one's exteriors and it's plants. Which is, it's summer, it's quite timely. It's produced, I think it's a Spanish magazine, but it's all in English. I'm just flipping to the colophon so I don't get that completely wrong. Yeah, their office is based in Spain, but I don't know if they do a Spanish version. It's got some amazing photography in it. Some really lovely stuff. I don't think the design really does it justice though. The whole thing feels a little first issue and a bit there's not enough to sort of anchor everything onto it. They've sort of tried to be really sort of minimal and polite and calm with the design, as you can see, and I just don't think it's really doing the articles justice. I mean, it's fine when the photography takes over and you're just looking at all these amazing photos like that one there. And I think that's a really strong editorial. Obviously, that there's been a lot of thought put into the way they're going to show stuff, and they do like here, like with the Staghorn Fern bit. This is very typical of the new style of these magazines, where they have like a bit in the middle, like pin-up and stuff like that. That's sort of uncoated stock and full of illustration. I think they sort of have tapped into a few cliches of sort of edgy magazines at the moment. And yeah, I kind of wish that I'd gone a bit more that way or tried to do something completely different, because it's sort of a bit middling design-wise. I'm sure it'll get better. I mean, it is quite expensive, considering but it feels like a bit of a wobbly first issue. Again, though, the photography just pulls you through. It's beautiful stuff, really lovely. I think they're in danger, though. I think having this sort of calm, undesigned sort of thing, they're in danger of looking like another sort of. They're in danger of looking like the traditional gardening magazines they're trying to get away from, in some ways. Yeah. Again, yeah. I do need to point out though, although I'm feeling like the design sort of let it down just a little bit, there is some awesome content and awesome photography. Really, really lovely commissioned stuff. So yeah, there is. It's not without hope, and I would recommend it. I think it's a really good magazine. I just hope they give the design a bit of a kick for the next issue. Not the designers, just the design. Don't actually physically harm anyone. That would be good if that doesn't happen. Oh, I'm showing off here because I got to do one of these custom wallpaper covers, and actually I went and worked there for a little while to freelance. I didn't work on this issue, but I heard I got to sort of hear all about the amount of work that went into it. I mean, it's the thing that amazes me about Wallpaper is they do all this crazy, amazing stuff, and they seem to do it quite effortlessly, without sort of. Well, it doesn't appear that they sort of make much of a fuss about it. It's really capable. I think this is what happens when you have an editor that's an ex-designer. Like, suddenly anything's possible design-wise because he's a designer and he's also got a team of designers, and everyone's sort of working together to investigate stuff. I was pointing out there too. They've used like a gabillion different types of paper stock in this issue too, including some really rare stuff that there's an article about a publisher who has worked on a perfume that's meant to smell like books, and they've got like paper that only the publisher uses for their particular books they've actually got in this issue. For graphic designers, there's a lot to talk about with this magazine. I wonder like if non-designers really get the whole sort of intricate aspect of all the sort of design things that have gone into it. This is another example too. Like there's a typeface. They have a typeface that they've commissioned, which is it's similar to graphic, which you can get from commercialtype.com, I think it is. I'll check that later. Mental note, check later. And for this handmade issue, they have a version of the typeface that's actually been hand drawn, and you don't really see it until you look really close at the type. But it's all slightly wobbly, like somebody's sort of drawn everything on with pen. It's all these like quite intricate sort of details that I think they give the magazine its strength. But then, yeah. So I have a thing like a really successful design is invisible, and I think there's sort of something going on in Wallpaper here where readers that aren't designers, that don't know about paper and don't know about typefaces and that sort of stuff, they just know that they're getting something unique and of a particular quality, and that's sort of how design is meant to work. You're not really meant to notice that you're not meant to notice all the geeky stuff I notice in these videos, essentially. You're meant to just get through something and get to the end and feel like it's a complete whole. There's nothing that's jarred or nothing that's thrown you off, unless it's intentional, which is another aspect of design that I quite like to get into, is deliberately sort of interjecting mistakes and stuff like that. Oh, this is going to be a waffly one, I think. I'm a bit unfocused today. What are we looking at now? We're looking at Juke. And I really want to include Juke. This is no way my favourite issue. I think this one's misfired just a bit. I'm sure these used to be free too, but now you buy it in shops. I don't know if that's a new thing or if I've just accidentally picked them up and not paid for them before. which has happened before. I'm a bit absent-minded like that sometimes. Pretty much there's this sort of diamond or like 45-degree angle square triangle theme throughout the whole magazine, which is what makes it really fascinating. And it is throughout. Like, there's not many sections of the magazine where it's not sort of there. I think the problem with this issue is that it becomes a bit intrusive. It's sort of like you sort of get it. Yes, you know, it's all sort of divided up. And these section breaks, I thought, were particularly good though. They sort of like this. They at least guide you through, and I didn't like. They help you sort of work out too that the reason the sort of square triangle thing gets crazier and calmer is because it matches the sections of the magazine. So at the front you've got lots of random text articles, which that introduces you to the sort of weird layout. Then they've got this section which has mainly images, which it's more subtle in. Although you sort of get the impression the designer couldn't help himself and just wanted to put more of them in. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's really interesting. I don't know if the photographers would have been so happy about it. That would have been interesting. Yeah, and you'll see at the back, it all gets broken up a bit more. I can't work out what the problem. I think one of the problems with it is in this issue in particular, there's been too much focus on this sort of technique and not enough on getting a variation in the photography. Like, it all feels a bit sort of grey by the time we get to the end. I think if you're going to... And past issues of Juke have been really bold in their use of colour, and that sort of helped punctuate certain issues as well. It's funny to see J Maskus in a sort of really edgy layout with this weird triangular thing going on as well. I do find it really interesting. I think it's worked really well with these collages here, but it does sort of all blend into one a bit much. There's no real sort of headings to guide you through it. I mean, there's little tiny headings that maybe a bit more play with typography would actually help it a bit more. But from what I've seen of Juke, it's evolving. It evolves every issue, so you don't know what the next issue is going to be like. Could be some other variation, which is really exciting. I really like this. Is my favourite page too. It's like an ad for the next issue. That I think it's just worked. I think it's because the colours work really well on that page. They're doing some weird thing with QR codes and Spotify as well. I'm really unconvinced by QR codes at the moment. I just think, you know, they worked in Tokyo, but you know, 5-6 years ago, they're just a bit of a drop the dead donkey, I think. Possibly the same goes for Spotify, I'm not sure. All people talk about with Spotify is the ads, so it's not a great sort of thing. Oh, see, waffly, told you. Completely waffly. You're going to be asleep by the time you get to the end of this. I would have lulled you with my waffle. We're looking at Collect, which is I should talk more about because it's really good. It's tiny little magazine from Adelaide in Australia, and it is all about Adelaide. And I went to Adelaide a long time ago, and it was really fun and a really lovely place, but I would never have thought you could make a whole magazine out of it. Sorry, Adelaide. But they have, and it's really entertaining and really fun, and you sort of flick through it and you think, I almost thought all this stuff can't just be in one place. Like, they talk about this sort of markets and cafes and all sorts of crazy stuff. And you sort of at the end go, okay, it's all in this one place. It's quite interesting. If they did an international edition, it would be like awesome. You can see a heavy influence from magazines like Monocle and things like that as well. This is like, I really loved this little thing. It was like the ideal post office. And the illustration is just really cute and sort of cartoony as opposed to sort of, you know, infographic-y or something like that. It's really quite sweet. The illustration is actually really strong in the whole magazine. They have a really good website too, which I know this sounds really weird, but their subscription form is really good. It's like the best subscription form I've ever seen, ever. I had online subscription form envy. It was really odd. They sort of tie in with all the online stuff, and they also sort of do nice things like they tell you about the paper and that it was sponsored, and it seems like a really thoroughly thought out magazine. I would really like to get some more copies of that. I thought it was really good, even though it was just about one place. It's bizarre. Here's another really well considered magazine. I have to put my hand up and say I worked on the very first issue of this a long time ago. I did one issue and then it sort of disappeared for a while, and then came back with a whole new sort of bunch of people working on it. And it's really strong. It's by a place called YCN, which if you're not sort of in the creative industries in London, it's sort of hard to describe. They inhabit a 3-story building which includes a library and a rooftop garden but growing actual plants, and there's a design studio, and there's all sorts of creative spaces inside, and I think they had a barista at one point. YCN is just this really crazy creative place where they're always coming up with amazing new projects and mainly working with recent grads on things. So this magazine is put together to promote their illustration roster. So they're a good place to find sort of really new emerging illustrators. If you commission illustration, it's a really good place to know. And this is just the perfect showcase. What they do is every issue they have one illustrator in particular. Oh, it's a surprise too. I was flicking through, I didn't notice this. It's actually an ad for Anorak magazine in the middle. It's quite well disguised. It's really cool and sneaky. Quite like that. But yeah, what I was saying is they have one illustrator in particular who sort of glues the magazine together by putting their illustrations throughout the magazine. And then they also had separate little articles focusing on individual illustrators and setting them all sorts of crazy briefs, because it's meant to show sort of like art directors and advertising agencies and magazine art directors how they can use YCN's roster of talent. So yeah, they actually, it's all commissioned stuff and it's all actual articles, as opposed to just sort of a flyer or a booklet or something saying this is our illustrators. This is actually showing the illustrators at work doing what they could possibly be commissioned for. So this is David Sparr shot. I think I've said that right. And he was just photographed sketching around London. It's really well written too, considering that it's really a showcase for illustration. Like they've had a really good sort of they've done a lot of groundwork to make sure the illustrators have something to actually talk about in the magazine. Oh, getting out of breath. I'm doing well. Yeah, I don't smoke or anything. I have no excuses. I got because I'm special, I got a letterhead saying hello with my magazine, and I just wanted to show you the letterhead because I thought it was really lovely. I haven't seen any other letterheads, but I think they vary. Like, as different illustrators do different backs on the letters as well. So yeah, that's really cool. That's Ideas Illustrated. Yeah, say that. Next up is article. Now I've tried to. I think I've got every copy of article that's come out so far. It's not a massive magazine. It's not a huge amount of pages, and I think you can pick it up for free. It's based. Well, the guys that put it together are based in Sheffield, and you'll see a lot of the advertising is Sheffield sort of shops and things like that. And they do include sort of a bit of content about the area, so it feels like it's of a certain place, but then it doesn't feel like it's restricted to that place. They take a theme every issue, and this issue is ports. I think the last one was cities. And yeah, they sort of have all these really interesting, really sort of in-depth articles. They look quite serious, just the way they're presented, but they're quite fun. And then, like, in the middle, you get sort of this crazy sort of broken up sort of bit with lots of random sort of stuff. So you can, it's really nice. You can sort of, depending on how you're feeling, you can sort of read some nice long articles on the front and the back, or you can just head to the middle where there's all this sort of stuff going on. It's a really good way to sort of really simple way to sort of organise a magazine, really. Um, yeah, and it's nice too because there's sort of there's a real interest in design. You can see in the magazine too, like there's sort of like a Sheffield. No one really discusses that much this sort of design connection Sheffield has now, after sort of being birthplace of the Designers Republic and a place where a lot of creatives work. Article actually picks up on that and uses it to its advantage, but not in a sort of overbearing way. Really interesting publication. I think it's really good, and it's got better. It's going to get better and better. The back, that's just a really ugly ad for MagCloud on the back of Longshot. Longshot there's been a sort of spate of these experiments of like getting lots of random contributors to get together and put magazines together in a short space of time. There was a really interesting one organised by Steve at Stack with Jeremy from Mag Culture at the South Bank Centre as part of their Festival of Britain sort of festival thing that's on at the moment. And that was sort of bring your laptop, bring whatever your camera, bring whatever to the South Bank Centre for the weekend, and we'll all try and put a magazine together. This one's different in that it was put together mainly through people sending sort of content in online, so you didn't have to be in one particular place. I think they had an office set up in the Gawker offices in the States. There's sort of a thank you for letting them use the space in there. And it's I haven't actually had a good look at this magazine because it only arrived this morning, so this is sort of passing glances. I haven't had a really good read. I think it's really interesting. It kind of peters out towards the back though. It becomes sort of just a series of essays, really, which I think is a bit of a shame. I think they've tried to... There's some nice illustration too, but there's only a couple of instances of it. I think overall with the design, they've tried to create something that's really clean and crisp and plain, sort of an empty vessel in a way. But I think hasn't worked really terribly well. There needs to be far much more going on to sort of get you to engage with the content a bit more. You can see towards the back here, and the articles end up competing with these weird, hideously ugly ads, like, because it's put together and published via MagCloud, and I use MagCloud for line read, and I don't have ads because I don't necessarily need them. It's oh yeah, this is just explaining sort of. I didn't see. Is that an ad? Has someone paid for that, or is that just the space they needed to fill? But yeah, they built a website and everything in the space of a weekend. I think, like, when you look at the magazine that was put together at South Bank Centre, it's a lot more engaging in terms of its design. So I don't think Longshot really has the excuse that they didn't have a lot of time. I think they just needed a bit more structure. Structure? It's not even a word, is it? Structure. Structure? I can't say that word, I'm just not going to say it. I'm going to move on. Oh yeah, there's a really cool thing happening with these reading lists now is that Steve, who runs Stack Magazines, is going to recommend a magazine and I'm going to review it. And we're going to see how long we can do that for. This is really fun. This is the first one. It's called Elsie. And apparently somebody thrust this into Steve's hands at a recent magazine event in London called Printout, where independent magazines can sort of bring along a copy of their magazine to add to this sort of browsing library thing. So you get together, someone talks about magazines, and then there's this whole sort of table full of magazines you probably haven't heard of before, which you can have a flick through. It's really good. And Elsie is one of the gems that was on the table that evening. And it's really cool. It's sort of it seems quite random when you flick through it. It's sort of mainly photography of quirky sort of things, and then sort of collages or people's collections of things or weird sort of hobbies and bits of artwork. And then you get to the back and they've sort of got a call for entries, which explains that it's sort of a magazine for people that do have sort of strange hobbies or are part of weird social clubs. or just collect odd things. And they're encouraging people to sort of dig stuff out of their attics and just go find things, and then they'll display them, which is really good. And it's quite a big format, quite nice paper actually. So there's lots of room to sort of show off sort of things like this. This was my favourite spread actually. It was orange wrappers, it's because they're both round. But it's the sort of stuff you probably would, rummage around Flickr to sort of find. But here it's all really nicely sort of laid out, and you can take your time with it and have a look around. They mentioned too that they're going to be doing some live events. So this is another interesting thing. I think with the sort of 48-hour magazine things, it's this merging of printed matter with actual events, which is quite interesting. And probably something you're going to see a lot more of. Oh yeah, with Elsie too, I meant to mention that the covers are all customized as well as the first page, which is really cool. We're taking a trip back in time to 1991 and the advent of desktop publishing. This magazine, it might look a little sort of tame to you, but at the time, this was probably the first magazine I noticed that had embraced digital production in terms of design. And I can remember seeing this while I was studying and poring over every little detail, like the spitting viper logo in the corner there, and just trying to work out how they did it, because InDesign it's actually quite sophisticated compared to what it was back in 1991. There was a lot of stuff you couldn't really do unless you applied a bit of lateral thinking to things. It was literally just a desktop publishing tool. In fact, it probably wasn't even InDesign. It would have been Quark or something like that. Oh, I see. I'm having trouble remembering what we used back then, which is really bad. It wasn't Ready Set Go. I know that. It was probably Quark at the time. Wherever it was really tricky to do things creatively. Like, people were still using traditional techniques to put magazines together. No one had really gone completely digital, except for this Lime Lizard magazine here, who just I think because they started publishing at the time, they were able to sort of jump in from the get-go and just go completely digital and see what they could do. It's quite funny looking back too, because I can remember there wasn't a massive load of fonts really available, or that we're just swamped with fonts these days. Like, you can't move for a new font release. But back then it was really just the classics like Gill and Euro style and things like that. This one I would have boggled over loads because of the curvy sort of text with the trying to work out how they did that, and it's really cool. I mean, this isn't by no means the best looking issue of Lime Lizard they put out, but it still has enough sort of weird, quirky things. Like that was just like that blew my mind. They cut off the type. How'd they do that? It was probably just a white box over the top. But it was just odd when you first started doing things digitally that there wasn't anyone able to tell you how to do stuff. It was almost like the early days of web design. You were literally picking up magazines or bits of design or publications and just poring over them to work out, that's what they did there, and that's a good trick, and I could do that trick. Because otherwise it was just all looking very like just blocks of text, with very little sort of design nous going into them. And there was a lot of built-in things like built-in drop shadows and all these sort of rubbish effects that Lime Lizard managed to avoid. They managed to find interesting things to do that other people hadn't thought of. And I would recommend checking out early issues of Lime Lizard, like pre-19 that issue as well. It got sort of a bit rubbish after that. But, yeah. And that's the end. All I've got left to do is to say thanks for dropping by, and also a big thanks to Stack for recommending Elsie. And if you want to find out more about Stack, visit stackmagazines.com. With Stack, you pay a certain amount of money for a subscription, and you get a surprise selection of different sorts of independent magazines. So it's really, really interesting and a must for maglophiles, fellow maglophiles. For everything else, visit linefeed.me, where you can see more videos and general bits and bobs. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you later.